On August 31st, 1997, Trevor Reese Jones was riding in a car with Princess Diana. He was her bodyguard. The car crashed in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel in Paris. Reese Jones broke every bone in his face. Surgeons used 150 pieces of titanium to reconstruct it. He was the only survivor. At the end of this video, I'll tell you what he did when he left the hospital, and what it says about what this work actually is. 7 levels. Let's get into it. Level 1. The Event Bodyguard. $75 to $150 per hour. A single guard at a one-day private event. This is the entry point. Not protection in any serious sense, but the presence of someone large and credentialed enough that the perception of risk is reduced. At this level, the bodyguard is a prop. Not an insult, a function. The celebrity who arrives at a premiere with one man in an earpiece is not buying protection from a credible threat. They are buying the visual signal that they are the kind of person who requires protection. The man in the suit creates the signal. The signal creates the reality. Most threats at this level are not threats. They are fans. The fan who gets too close. The person who will not take no from anyone else. The situation that requires someone to physically interpose between a person and an unwanted interaction. Level 2. The Personal Protection Officer. $85 to $175 per hour for qualified executive protection personnel. Standard protection involving a trained security professional providing close proximity coverage. Here, the relationship between the protector and the protected becomes personal. This is not a guard who arrives for the event and leaves when it ends. This is someone who knows the principal's schedule, their habits, their family members' faces, the layout of their home, the route they take to work. The advance work begins before the principal has left the building. The protection officer checks the route, identifies the entry points at the destination, confirms the exit options, notes the unusual car that has been parked in the same spot for 3 days. Here's the thing about Level 2 that distinguishes it from Level 1. At Level 1, nothing was expected to happen, and nothing happened. At Level 2, something specific was expected to possibly happen, and the officer's job is to ensure it does not. The difference is not the bodyguard's size. It is the quality of the threat assessment that preceded the assignment. The threat assessment is the product. The bodyguard is the response to it. Level 3. The Full-Time Detail. $600,000 to $2 million per year. This is the first level at which close protection becomes an organizational function rather than a hired service. The principal does not call a security company when they need coverage. They have a team. The team has shifts. The team has a lead agent who manages the rotation and the intelligence picture and the relationship with local law enforcement in every city the principal travels to regularly. The advance team goes ahead. They visit the restaurant before the principal arrives and identify every exit, every staff member's face, every table with a direct sightline to the door. They speak to the venue's security, establish a communication protocol, confirm the vehicle access. By the time the principal walks in, the room has already been assessed by someone who was trained to assess it by people who have had to respond when an assessment was wrong. Level 4. The Residential Operation. $1 million to $5 million per year. At Level 4, the protection extends beyond the principal and encompasses everything around them. The house is hardened. Not in the way that a wealthy person installs a security system, in the way that a former Secret Service agent assesses a structure for vulnerabilities and produces a report that lists 37 specific changes before they will certify the location as adequately protected. Ballistic glass. Safe room with independent communications, food supply, and medical kit. Cameras covering every approach. Motion sensors with response protocols. A generator that kicks on in under 30 seconds. The staff is vetted. Not a background check, a comprehensive assessment. Every person who regularly enters the home has been checked against threat databases, interviewed about their relationships and financial situation, and assigned a clearance level that determines which areas of the property they can access unsupervised. The housekeeper does not have access to the principal's home office. The gardener does not have a key. Here is the thing the security industry does not say in its marketing materials. The most protected people on Earth are not always the ones with the most bodyguards. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they are the ones who made the fewest public appearances, gave the fewest interviews, allowed the fewest photographs, and generally conducted their lives in ways that gave potential threats the least possible information to work with. 3 levels left, and the protection stops being defensive. Level 5. The Threat Intelligence Operation. $5 million to $15 million per year. At Level 5, the security operation stops waiting for threats and starts finding them. A threat intelligence team monitors the open internet, the dark web, specific forums where threats against the principal have previously appeared, social media accounts that have been flagged for hostile content, and financial transactions that might indicate planning activity. They do not wait for a threat to become credible before responding. They identify the threat at its earliest stage, the post, the forum thread, the search pattern, and begin a response before the person making the threat has finished forming the intention. The team includes former intelligence officers from multiple countries, cybersecurity specialists, and investigators with backgrounds in behavioral psychology who assess whether a specific communication represents a genuine threat or the performative aggression that accounts for the vast majority of online hostility directed at public figures. The distinction matters because the resources deployed in response are calibrated to the assessment. An undifferentiated response to every threatening communication would require an operation 10 times this size and would still miss the actual threats by drowning them in noise. Level 6. The Mobile Military Operation. At Level 6, the protection detail is no longer a security team. It is a small military unit. Armored vehicles, not the kind with bulletproof glass that celebrities occasionally use, but vehicles rated for high explosive devices on the chassis, with run-flat tires, communications jamming equipment, and medical trauma kits accessible from every seat. A minimum of 3 vehicles traveling together on any movement, with a lead vehicle that identifies route problems before the principal's vehicle reaches them. Counter-drone systems on the convoy for travel in environments where drone-delivered devices have been documented as a threat vector. Medical personnel embedded in the detail who can manage a traumatic injury in the vehicle without stopping. The detail at this level has rehearsed specific scenarios: ambush, vehicle attack, medical emergency during travel, active threat at a fixed location. They rehearse them regularly because the research on response times in genuine threat scenarios shows consistently that teams who have rehearsed specific scenarios outperform teams that have not by margins that determine survival outcomes. The rehearsal is not theater. It is the entire reason the team is better than the team one level below. Level 7. The Inversion and the Answer. At the very top of this hierarchy, the protection detail has become indistinguishable from a small nation's security apparatus. Multiple vehicles, multiple teams covering multiple locations simultaneously. Advanced teams in every city on the principal's schedule 3 weeks ahead of arrival. Liaison relationships with intelligence services in multiple countries. Medical staff, communications specialists, and a dedicated operations center that monitors the principal's position and the threat environment around it continuously. The principal has not been alone, genuinely alone, without a team member within response distance in years, possibly longer. And here is the answer I promised at the start. What did Trevor Rees-Jones do when he left the hospital? He worked for the United Nations as a district security officer. Then he became the head of global security at AstraZeneca, the pharmaceutical company. He did not leave the security profession. He did not describe his experience in the tunnel as a reason to stop. He described it, in the book he later wrote, as the event that defined what the work actually is, not the act of taking a bullet, which is the mythology, but the act of being present in conditions where the possibility exists every day for as long as the assignment continues. The event bodyguard who stands outside a venue for 8 hours and invoices for nothing happening, and the agent who rode in the car with Diana are doing the same job at completely different concentrations. I break down how these things actually work, not how the movies describe them. See you in the next one.